It's a pleasure each time I come on set to talk about Pan-African issues affecting the continent and affecting ourselves. So why not? Hopefully we shall be at our best today, and it's going to be worthwhile.
In this edition of the program, we are going to pay homage to the former Cardinal, His Eminence Cardinal TUMI, who passed on to glory. Today we'll be paying homage to him in today's edition of the program. We'll also be taking a look at the release of the acquittal by the appeal chamber of the International Criminal Court of former Ivorian President Laurent Gbagbo, who has been in jail for close to 8 years now and was finally acquitted. We're also going to be understanding the early departure of many Pan-African heroes. Why do they die so young? What is happening, and what can be done to salvage the situation? And following this spectacular performance of Cameroonian Francis Ngannou, who this week who was crowned this week heavyweight champion at the UFC in the United States, we are going to understand how Africa buries talent by taking a look at what needs to be done to groom and nurture our talent here in Africa. But let's begin to this edition of the program, 90 Minutes in Africa, with the latest news from across the continent. We start here in Cameroon, where the Catholic Church is mourning the passing away of Christian Cardinal TUMI. His death was announced today morning by the Archbishop of Douala, Samuel Kleda. Christian Cardinal TUMI was born on October 15, 1930. He was the first and only Cameroonian cardinal. We'll be paying tribute to him during this edition of the program. In Guinea, the WHO has reported a new Ebola virus disease case in Saluta village, Guinea. This is the first reported case since March 4. This brings the outbreak total to 19 confirmed and 9 deaths. That is 19 confirmed deaths. The United States has lifted sanctions on the International Criminal Court top prosecutor Fatou Bensouda. The sanctions were imposed under former President Donald Trump over the court's investigations into alleged war crimes by the U.S. in Afghanistan and U.S. ally Israel in the Palestinian territories. In the Central African Republic, the death has been announced of Muhammad Abbas Siddiqui, leader of 3R, a major rebel group in the Central African Republic. The founder of the 3R rebel group died on March 25 at a health center in the northwestern part of the Central African Republic following various injuries he got on November 16 last year. G7 countries have expressed concern about human rights violations in Ethiopia's conflict ridden Tigray. The comments came after the International Crisis Group warned of the danger of a prolonged conflict. All parties have been urged to exercise utmost restraint, ensure the protection of civilians, and respect human rights and international law. Now to Niger, where Mohamed Bazoum officially took office as Niger's president on Friday in the country's first ever democratic changeover. 2 days after the government foiled a coup attempt, he promised what he describes as tackle what he describes as terrorism misfortune, and to create conditions for the return of refugees to their respective villages as soon as possible. Those are the latest top stories from across Africa. Time for us to get your missions and take a look at what has been making news during the week in our slot Africa Web Zap. We'll be right back. That was the Africa Web Zap. Gentlemen, once more, you're welcome to the program. You now have the opportunity to react to either the news of the day or the Africa Web Zap before we talk about the legacy of Christian Cardinal TUMI and his impact on Christianity and peace and reconciliation in Cameroon, which of course had an extended impact across Africa and the rest of the world. I don't know, I'll begin with you, Tohndoh Agustine, after watching the news and then watching the Africa Web Zap, which story caught your attention?
Okay, thank you, Elvis. There are two stories that actually caught my attention on this news and African Web Zap. And the first story is the lifting of the sanctions on Fatou Bensouda, who was actually the chief prosecutor of the ICC. I think that story actually caught my attention because I am actually asking why sanctions will be lifted against such a person. I looked at Fatou Bensouda as an enemy to Africa. I'm so sorry to say this, but because I think her drive of the ICC has taken ICC as an anti-African organ. An anti-African organ, a body that has been used to really fight against Africa. I don't know the reason why up to now she has not been able to, she left office without calling the president of Syria to answer for the war crimes that have been committed in that part of the world, which has led to close to 500,000 people dead. I don't know why she actually in a term of office will specialize on investigating African presidents and placing sanctions on African countries and others. So I think that woman was actually an agent that was used against the African continent. I want to understand whether ICC was an organ that was created against Africa or it's an organ that was created to judge criminal cases across the world. So that case actually caught my attention, and to my opinion, I don't see the reason why the United States should be lifting sanctions against such a person. I think even if they lift sanctions, the African Union should be thinking about placing their own sanctions against her. And I think the next story that caught my attention was the story of the burial of the daughter of Prophet Bushiri, Israela Bushiri. And what actually caught my attention, I don't want to look at it from the perspective of the burial of a daughter of a prophet. Naturally, it's something that can happen to anybody. Even the greatest prophets in the Bible, they still died. We don't have a prophet who lived in the Old Testament who is alive today, so they can lose their children. Jesus Christ, who was our Lord and Savior, he went through death before he came to resurrection. But what actually caught my attention are the circumstances that led to the death of the child. The report that the doctors gave and everything. This child was actually being referred for medical attention in Kenya after she was diagnosed with a lung cancer that the hospitals in Malawi could not be able to handle, and being referred for medical attention in Kenya. She arrives at the airport, and after all routine checks are being done, she's traveling with the grandmother to Kenya for medical attentions, and they are being stopped at the airport. They are being stopped from traveling despite the child having all valid documents. I think this was linked to the father's persecution case, which is alleged he jumped bail in South Africa and he moved to Malawi. And I think that we have laws in the world, we have human rights in the world that protect children, and I think a child should be protected. A child should not be persecuted for the crimes of the father whatsoever. The father has not yet been proven guilty because the court has not yet been able to pass the verdict on his case, and the child should have had his own rights to have the health. I think the police later on give no excuse because they said they don't know the reason why they were stopping them, and the chief prosecutor of the country was the one finally who actually had to pass, who had passed that decision that the child should not travel. Finally, the child finally get to Kenya. It was late, somewhere later, and the doctors could not more manage the case because the case was really at a certain level, and the child finally died. I think we have child activists in the world today who actually stand for children. No child should have the right to be able to die, whether you're the son of a president or you're the son of a pastor or the son of a prophet. Before being a prophet, you are a human, you're a citizen of a country, and you have the right. So I think that as a Pan-Africanist, I looked at this from a different point, and I think that African children should be given equal rights. I think if this was the child of Emmanuel Macron, and if it was the child of maybe Donald Trump or the child of Biden, it would have been all over the news in the world, and people would have been fighting and standing up. We talk about Black Lives Matter. George Floyd was pressed dead, and at that point the whole world went striking. African countries joined the strike of what happened in the United States, and 50 countries in Africa, in America, 50 states in America were able to strike to demand justice for that. But in Africa, we find our children being dead. We find that at times some particular people in the society are being stigmatized and they're treated like second-class citizens, and I don't know why this should be. So these are the two questions, two aspects that caught my attention.
Thank you, Tohndoh Agustine. Mballe, I don't know if there's any story which caught your attention, either in the news or the website we watched.
Yeah, I think the issue of the daughter of Prophet Bushiri was really something that touched many hearts within the week, beginning from when the news broke that she was stopped at the airport. You know, for whatever reason, the child's medical condition should have been prioritized, should have been allowed, given a chance at least to go see her doctors, and given a chance to live. So I think it's been a painful experience for him as a father also. There is no father should be able to bury his son or daughter at such an early age. And also, to add to what Apostle Tohndoh spoke about the International Court of Justice, this is one of those institutions whereby since creation we have always seen third world leaders go there and prosecuted for things that really are, I would say, minor. Even though we're talking of human lives, you can't say minor, but comparatively looking at what the superpowers have been doing in the world, I mean, comparatively you realize that third world president or leaders really don't do much. So like he said, it's been an institution that has been used against third world leaders, third world countries, countries that are struggling. By the way, Donald Trump placed sanctions on the chief prosecutor because they were investigating American crimes. That's when they came in to say, okay, we are imposing sanctions. So you look at the double standards, and well, what else can we say?
Thank you, Wainkem Mballe. Philemon Mballe, I don't know if you have any reaction.
Well, my reaction would just be to spice up a little more on the Gambian lawyer turned ICC prosecutor, chief prosecutor, Madame Fatou, and like we've been saying, it's like she's there, she's like a window dresser, while the world leaders do what produce their agenda. And just to bring more light on it, like I said, in 2011, when former President Gbagbo was invited to the ICC, that same year, of course, he himself and Charles Blegude were being charged of, were being accused, I should say, of being responsible for the deaths of 3,000 plus Ivorians. That was in sometime 2011, and coincidentally, it was the same moment when the Syrian crisis started. And following the statistics, in 2011 alone, about 6,000 Syrians, civilians, plus pro and anti-government fighters died. I mean, the figures are very staggering between 2011 and 2021, March 2021, where we are. Over 500,000. I mean, I contacted several sources, and the figures almost match.
Exactly.
About 500,000 Syrians have died between this 10-year span, and I do not know, like we've been saying, we do not understand why the ICC hasn't called up an individual from Syria to answer questions as per the deaths of over 500,000 innocent, I should say, civilians of the Syrian Republic. And like I said, the same year Babu was invited to the ICC, is the same year the Syrian crisis started. 10 years later, he has been acquitted, and yet the Syrian crisis is still ongoing. No, Madame Fatou, we expect her, of course, as the chief prosecutor, or we've been expecting her as a chief prosecutor to bring this case to the limelight. Unfortunately, nothing has been done for Syria. And when they wanted to investigate the US for invading Iraq, and then the US president comes up and puts a ban on an individual, on the ICC chief prosecutor. I wonder if that position was, held by a European or an American. That ban from Donald Trump would have being meted upon the person. So it's really a worrisome situation, and I'm sure we'll have time to talk about this. But
exactly,
it has. I went through a lot of statistics, countries that are affiliated to the ICC, countries that are not affiliated to the ICC. Africans, we need to sit up and we need to learn a lesson.
That's right.
Thank you, Philemon Mballe. Time for us, ladies and gentlemen, to pay homage to His Eminence Christian Cardinal TUMI, who passed on to glory earlier late yesterday. Christian Cardinal TUMI, it's time for us to take a look at his biography. Christian Cardinal TUMI, Archbishop Emeritus of Douala. He was born on the 15th of October 1930 in Kikaikelaiki, Cameroon. He did his secondary studies at the diocesan seminaries and the seminaries of Ibadan, Bodija, and Enugu in Nigeria. From 1969 to 1973, he obtained in Nigeria a teacher's training grade certificate, a University General Certificate of Education at the honorary level in London, a licentiate in the theology at the Catholic Faculty of Lyon, a doctorate in philosophy at the Catholic University of Freiburg, Switzerland. He is well versed in his native dialect in Saw, Pidgin and Hausa, Latin, English, and French. He was ordained priest on the 17th of April 1966 in Sopo, Diocese of Boya, and from 1966 to 1967 carried out his ministry as a parochial vicar at Fiango in Kumbu. From 1967 to 1969, he was a professor at the Bishop Rogan College Minor Seminary. In 1973, after studying abroad, he returned to his diocese and was named rector of the Major Regional Seminary of Bambui, Archdiocese of Bamenda. He was also chaplain to the Association of Catholic Dams and was very involved in promoting the ecumenical movement, obtaining much esteem by Presbyterians and Baptists. President of the Presbyterial Diocesan Council on the 6th of December 1979, he was elected the first bishop of the Diocese of Ngwa, and he received episcopal ordination on the 6th of January 1980 in St. Peter's Basilica. During his pastoral care, the local church developed rapidly, enriched with institutions, centers of formation, nursery schools, and dispensaries. He was elected on 23rd of April 1982 Vice President of the Episcopal Conference. On the 19th of November 1982, he was promoted to Adjutor, Archbishop of Garwa. 17th of March 1984, he was made Archbishop. In 1985, he was elected as President of the National Episcopal Conference of Cameroon until 1991, and then President of the Symposium of Episcopal Conferences of Africa from 1990 to 1994. He participated in the 6th General Assembly of the Synod of Bishops and in the Extraordinary Assembly of the Synod of Bishops of 1985, and so on and so forth. Archbishop of Douala from the 31st of August 1991 to the 17th of November 2009. He participated in the conclave of April 2005, which elected Pope Benedict XVI, created and he was proclaimed cardinal by St. John Paul II in the consistory of the 28th of June 1988. And he a man of God. He was also a staunch advocate for just society. Cardinal TUMI was a defender of the rights of the oppressed and the marginalized. He played a big role in the major national dialogue that was organized in 2019 to solve the socio-economic crisis in the northwest and southwest regions of Cameroon. Cardinal TUMI was chairman of the commission to reflect on assistance to returning refugees and displaced persons during the major national dialogue, and so on and so forth. If we keep on talking about Cardinal TUMI, I am sure that we'll keep on talking till evening. He has passed on to glory. Today, his death was announced by His Lordship Samuel Kleda today. This is quite a big loss for Cameroon, Wainkem Pilate. Not only for Cameroon, but for the church and Africa as a whole.
Yes, I think really it's a great loss, and it's one of those names that growing up we started hearing right
to do with political injustice as well as social injustice. I would want to round it off by saying that he consecrated his last days. Thankfully, he consecrated his last days towards fighting for peace in Cameroon, especially in the northwest and southwest region. He, on several accounts, I think he even proposed having an all-Anglophone conference so as to find solutions to the ongoing crisis at one point in time. But his idea was probably dismissed, but his effort was clearly was very clear to the entire nation and to the rest of Africa. Again, he has, I mean, he went to the northwest in the heat of the crisis on several counts. Cardinal TUMI was kidnapped at one point in time by unidentified men, rebels in quotes. We cannot really place a finger. And even when he came out of that,
he did not stop preaching peace.
He did not stop preaching. Sit on the table and bring lasting solution to the crisis. I have been there. I have been to the northwest. I have been at the heat of everything. What I want is peace. And then, as if that was not enough, he really made peace with his culture, just like the other panelists have said. I think 3 weeks ago,
we discussed about it in this program.
We talked about it, how he embraced his culture. He embraced a typical Shofai title back as in Elite, which was, I mean, like I said, he lived it all. He gave in all. I think that should be a situation where Apostle Paul said, you go empty, you die empty, or so. Give it all. I think Christian TUMI gave it all, like from his background, from his biography. He's a wealth of experience, a lot of achievements, both personal and you know, as a community. And so, well, we can only wish him well, and we hope that what he prayed for, what he preached, what he gave in his last breath, his dying moments, his wishes, we hope that one day it will come to pass and we'll see lasting peace in Cameroon, in Africa, and why not? We can also see a melange. We can also see some concordance between religion and culture.
Tohndoh, Agustine, at one point, Christian Cardinal TUMI was being tipped as favorite to run for president in this country. But can we say that probably his position as man of God acted like a handicap for him to rise to maybe a position of leadership to really implement his vision the way he wanted?
Okay. What actually matter is here is not what people circulated as rumors. What matter was the intention of the Archbishop. I think the Archbishop came out clear and he said he doesn't have an intention to run as president of the country, and actually what he just wants is to speak truth to power and actually advocate for the oppressed. And I think that throughout his time he has actually stood for that. I think his position as a man of God in no way should have stopped him from running for president or for being a president. We have so many countries in Africa, like actually Malawi now. Reverend Lazarus Chakwera is the president. His Excellency Reverend Lazarus Chakwera, he's the president of the country, and a lot of things are happening, a lot of good things are happening. We think that there come a time where we must allow each contribution to count in our nation. There come a time where we must understand that as a man of God, there are not some people who are more citizens of the nation than others. If you are a man of God, you are equally a citizen of the country who is actually backed by the constitution of the country, except that the constitution actually plays some strings when it comes to men of God running. But I think that if there's no constitutional problem of a man of God running, Christian Cardinal TUMI would have made a really good choice, because he had very strong points. If you look at the Anglophone crisis, this morning I was saying it and I was speaking with some people and I say, I admire his contribution. I admire his contribution. Listen, at a time like this, we need not to say, why are you bringing this? Why are you bringing that? We need everybody to have a solution at hand. We compare our solutions together and we talk. We need not to criticize somebody because the person was not talking on the popular opinion, but so long as his motive was to bring a solution to the people, we need to actually appreciate him. So if each and every one of us seated and each and every one of us who is a Cameroonian have in our mind solution, and we sit on the table to speak solution, at the end of the day we'll come out with something. He wrote a memo to the president through the prime minister before the national dialogue, and he presented a document with a lot of points inside. He planned to hold the all Anglophone conference, which was actually to gather Anglophone, assess their opinions and see how they can come up with a document to table to the president. He was standing for federation. He had all his views. He was even kidnapped. He was kidnapped when he was traveling to his native village. It's not like some people who have just abandoned the Northwest region. Me, I'm coming from the Northwest and I live the situation on a daily basis. But some people, if you ask them for the last 4 years, they have not placed their leg in the Northwest region. So I think as a man, if he had even run as the president, I think I would have stood to vote for him.
Okay, thank you, Apostle Tohndoh. But Wainkem Pilate, something happened today which was a little bit very disgusting, and I'm sure I will not advise anyone to share the images. I saw images of the late Cardinal Christian TUMI. I mean, after he passed away, images of him on the deathbed were being shared, and I don't know, is this really a way to honor a man who did a lot for Cameroon? I don't know what we need to do. I don't know whether you saw that and your reaction to that.
Yes, I think before I came into the studio, I saw one of those videos. It was very heartbroken, but you know, it's the kind of world we live in today. That shows the level of disrespect that, you know, it's easily available at our fingertips. You know, that because you have a cell phone in your hands, you can record people, you know, at very sensitive, sacred moments. Somebody's last moments are sacred, you know, and given the fact that he was a highly respected somebody who has, you know, lived at the highest ranks of society, those kind of images of him are not supposed to even be taken. So I don't know, it's really unprofessional, and I'm grateful that the Minister of Health has responded to that, has reacted, and I think it is something that should really be frowned upon. Those kind of things should not be happening, and those who have been circulating those images, I think you should take them down, delete them from your phone. Those are not the kind of memories we should have of somebody like, you know, Christian Cardinal TUMI.
Of course, Philemon Mballe, you want to react to that?
Yeah, it just brings me to a suggestion on 90 Minutes in Africa. I think I've been pondering over this. Maybe I make it public here, Elvis. We should find time to talk about social media, its disadvantages and its advantages, because as it stands now, I believe we are being used by these smart devices, phones, screens, and the rest. They were made for us to use.
Yeah,
but they are now using us.
We're now using it.
It beats my imagination. I really would not want to see those images. Probably.
I mean, once you see them, just delete them.
So disgusting.
I mean, it speaks. One day, even the head of state's private pictures could go out there.
Yeah.
We have documents from ministries in Cameroon which are circulating prior to their official signs
release,
and release. So it's really a forum where we need to find time, Elvis, to talk about the social media and recent technology, how they are misusing us instead of us making use of them.
Apostle, before we leave the topic to talk to dive into other issues, maybe I know that the entire church in Cameroon and of course Africa, they are really touched by the death of their shepherd, Cardinal Christian TUMI, and of course they will need a message of consolation at this time. Some of them are unable to bear the news, and there's a lot of mourning going on. I think you have a word of consolation for them.
Okay, I want to say this. It's a great loss. It's a great loss to the body of Christ. There come a time when we need to hide our differences and forge ahead like people of the same origin. Cardinal TUMI, I want to say this. I had respected him throughout my lifetime. There was one time I had struggled to meet him, but I finally couldn't be able to meet, and such a moment to me was like a great moment. I really want to say this is a great loss to the body of Christ in the whole nation. He stood up for Christian values, he upheld those values, and he fought for the oppressed. This is all about Jesus Christ. Jesus Christ stood for the voiceless. He said he has been sent to release those who are in prison, and Cardinal TUMI stood for them. I want to actually send this message of condolence and comfort to the body of Christ in Cameroon and said, we will only mourn him in the best way if someone rises up in the nation and copy his attributes and do exactly what Cardinal TUMI was doing. And why not even better than him? Fight like Cardinal TUMI. If you fight like Cardinal TUMI, if you promote the image of the church, the image of Jesus Christ like Cardinal TUMI, I will actually want to say that this is the best way to mourn him. So let's be comforted as a church. We are not mourning in despair. We're mourning with hope. We know that each and everyone who stands in the church and believes in the Lord Jesus and has given his life to Jesus Christ has one hope, and the hope is that we're going to meet one day after rapture. And I believe that on that day we'll be sitting together with Cardinal TUMI and every other person based on the decisions he made while he was on earth. Thank you.
Thank you, Tohndoh, Agustine. Wainkem, Pilate, your last word to those who are mourning Cardinal TUMI, because we are still waiting for the burial program. Of course, it's going to be organized and announced. But your last word to Christians, not only Christians, but to Cameroonians and his lovers across Africa who are really going through a difficult moment now, mourning the loss of this great cardinal.
Yes, I would just like to say that this is the time for us to be strengthened and to be encouraged to look at the exemplary life that he lived, his values, what he preached. This is a time for us to look back and see what he did. If you could summarize his life as an individual, as a leader in the church, look back at what he preached, look back at what he stood for, and let us uphold it, because like the apostle said, this is the best way to mourn him, to uphold what he stood for. And I just want to say, as a nation, we should be strengthened. As the body of Christ, we should be strong. And to those whom he influenced all across the world, this is the time for us to truly celebrate a legend.
Thank you, Wainkem, Pilate. Thank you, Tohndoh, Agustine. Thank you, Philemon. Mballe, time for us now to talk about former Ivorian President Laurent Gbagbo. The appeals, the ICC appeal chamber finally decided to acquit Laurent Gbagbo, which means that Laurent Gbagbo is free. Laurent Gbagbo and Charles Blegude, the hearing held on the 31st of March 2021. That was the appeals verdict of Laurent Gbagbo, which finally decided that Laurent Gbagbo has been acquitted, because as you know, he had already been acquitted, but the decision was appealed by the prosecutor, Fatou Bensouda, and so the appeal chamber decided that Laurent Gbagbo has finally been freed, and he has been authorized to go to any country of his choice that is ready to receive him. Let us go to our missions and watch the verdict before we come back to the studio for more analysis.
In the present appeal, the appeals chamber by majority has found no error that could have materially affected the decision of the trial chamber in relation to either of the prosecutor's two grounds of appeal. It therefore rejects the prosecutor's appeal and confirms the decision of the trial chamber. Furthermore, the appeal chamber recalls that in its decision on Mr. Gbagbo's request for reconsideration of his conditions of release, the appeal chamber reviewed and revised the conditions on the release of Mr. Gbagbo and Mr. Blegude, revoking some conditions and maintaining others. The appeal chamber hereby revokes all remaining conditions on the release of Mr. Gbagbo and Mr. Blegude as a result of this judgment. The registrar is hereby directed, pursuant to Rule 185, Paragraph 1 of the rules, to make such arrangements as considered appropriate as soon as possible for the safe transfer of Mr. Gbagbo and Mr. Blegude to a state or states contemplated in that rule, taking into account the views of the acquitted persons.
That was the verdict by the appeal chamber of the International Criminal Court, finally acquitting Laurent Gbagbo. Time for us now to go to Ivory Coast and take a look at what happened shortly after Laurent Gbagbo was released. His wife, Simone Gbagbo, alongside supporters of his party, family members and sympathizers, turned up at Laurent Gbagbo's residence. They have not been able to see him for close to 8 years now. There was celebration in Ivory Coast shortly after the decision to acquit Laurent Gbagbo. Let's watch. That was the atmosphere in Ivory Coast after the release of former Ivorian President Laurent Gbagbo by the appeal chambers of the International Criminal Court. And our correspondents in Ivory Coast also went to the street to get the views of some Ivorians. What do they think about the release of former President Laurent Gbagbo? We interviewed some men on the street, and as well as the wife of Laurent Gbagbo, Simone Gbagbo, to get their views that after what they expect, what will change in Ivory Coast following their release. Let's watch.
La CPI.
Okay, le premier sentiment c'est.
My first impression is that of justice and joy because no one believed this would happen. Politically speaking, it is a big plus for the international judicial system. We have spent years in uncertainty, in fighting. The good news is that Ivory Coast is reunited with its sons. It took a long time. They were far from their families. They are coming back home. We will not be happy to meet people they lost contact with for quite a long time. The release of former Ivorian President and his Minister of Youth Affairs brings relief for the whole country. We have been through tough times. We went through a post-electoral crisis. For close to 10 years now, we needed reconciliation. This could only be done in the presence of all the sons and daughters of the country. His acquittal is good news for all, and if they come back, we can now engage with the reconciliation process. The reconciliation process would have been difficult if they were sentenced. Now it is possible for everyone to come together, notwithstanding their political affiliation, and chart a new course for Ivory Coast.
Imaginez-vous un instant s'ils étaient condamnés. C'est vrai qu'on pourra se réconcilier, mais ça sera vraiment bancal.
À chaud, la première chose, j'exprime ma joie. Je suis très heureuse. Je suis satisfaite. Je pense que nous
I am happy and satisfied. I think we have taken time to prove. Glory to God, because at last the truth has been told and justice has been done. Thanks to all Ivorians who all over the world did everything possible, putting their security and health at risk for us to be where we are today. Thanks to all Africans from all nations for their efforts. It became an African affair. I thank the media and other organizations who intervened, sometimes in the media and sometimes in discretion. Thanks to Laurent Gbagbo and Blegude, who were at the forefront. God bless all Africans. We have just had a big victory for the black race. President Gbagbo has been free. He has to come back home. I think the government should be at the forefront. A plane should be sent to pick him up, same way he was taken out. I count on the government.
Je me dis que le gouvernement même doit prendre le devant pour aller le chercher de la même manière qu'ils ont mis un avion pour le déporter. Ils doivent maintenant affréter un avion pour aller le récupérer, le ramener rapidement chez lui. Je compte sur eux. Je compte sur le gouvernement tout entier.
The last reaction was a reaction of Laurent Gbagbo's wife, Simone Gbagbo. Imagine a woman that has spent close to 80 years, with her single husband. Tohndoh, Agustine, you've watched the images. I want to begin by getting your reaction by tapping from the last statement that the government of Ivory Coast, the same way a plane was used to carry him out of the country, another plane should be sent to bring him back to Ivory Coast. Do you think that is possible?
It may not be possible, but that is what is to be done. Because I think in the first place, Laurent Gbagbo was being sent out of the country, being escorted, not in the way he ought to have gone. And he was like being carried away like a prisoner. And at that time, he was still innocent, being in prison for 80 years, waiting for judgment. And at one point, you know, in the justice system, they say justice delayed is justice denied. I don't know why it should take him up to 8 years for the verdict to be able to come out that he is actually liberated, he's acquitted, and this and that. So the wife has the right to say the government, the same government that looked for a plane for him to be carried out, should look for one to be able to bring him back into the country. I think she's right to say that it may not be possible, but it is something that should be done.
Philemon Mballe, you watched the celebration in Ivory Coast after the decision to acquit Laurent Gbagbo, the appeal decision, because he had already been acquitted before. But Fatou Bensouda kept on saying that Laurent Gbagbo had to bear the consequences of what happened. But finally, Laurent Gbagbo's hands are clean. Now, what do you think needs to be done for him to be able to reintegrate his country? Because as it stands, Laurent Gbagbo is very, very important in the peace process in Ivory Coast.
Nothing needs to be done. It's like I leave Belgium as a Cameroonian and I want to come back home to Cameroon. I'm a citizen. He remains a citizen, and not just a citizen, a former president. So there's nothing that needs to be done. I think when the right time comes, President Gbagbo will be reunited with his family and his supporters, sympathizers, and personally, I was happy about when I got the news. I was touched. I was happy because it proved to the world and to Africa that at one point in time we need to be our brother's keeper. We need to do things for ourselves, by ourselves. And like I always said, it's a tricky situation for Ivory Coast. Now we are talking about Gbagbo and Blé coming back to Ivory Coast. It's their right as Ivorians. They must go back home. Under what conditions? Are they going back for peace? Are they going back? There is a fundamental question that stands, Elvis. If these two who were accused of killing 3,000 Ivorians have been acquitted, it means the culprit is still somewhere out there. And if you call Gbagbo to question, why not call the other person or find out who the other person
actually killed the people,
who actually is responsible for the death of 3,000 Ivorians? So, to me, it's a little far from over. To be very honest, it's a little far from over. This is just one corner, one turn. There's more to come, but like Africans, we must sit back and learn from the situation. It's possible, but it's not going to be easy for the reintegration of these guys, of these former Ivorian leaders into the society, because they have already been painted as enemies to the government, enemies to the people. These are the guys who are responsible for the death of 3,000 Ivorians. So there's that picture that needs to be, cleaned about them. And they do have their followers and their supporters. I beg to differ that it might not be easy for their reintegration. And as long as the right culprits are out there, probably still in Ivory Coast, they need to be fished out, one way or the other.
Wainkem Pilate, what does this say about the credibility of the International Criminal Court? The fact that Laurent Gbagbo was captured and, spent close to 80 years, and at the end, he is not guilty. Can we say it has proven that the court is credible, or it has contributed in tainting the image of the International Criminal Court?
Well, there are so many ways we can look at that, and would I say that the International Criminal Court is not is a perfect institution? No, I would not say it's perfect. Yeah, but looking at this case, it took them 8 years, and with really little evidence or no evidence at all to have put this man in prison for 8 years. And his release also indicates that, well, there's some justice, there's some good that has been done. It gives hope also, it gives reassurance that sometimes we can depend on these institutions to get justice for real crimes that have been committed. Yes, but as far as this case is concerned, well, there is a lot that if you want to start looking into, you have to begin to touch a lot of other issues which I don't know if we might have time to look at those things. But yes, it's something to celebrate. It gives us hope that at least the institution stood for justice, and the man who was once accused is now free.
I see Tohndoh, Agustine, easy to react, but before you react, I want to say that I have sent an interview protocol to the International Criminal Court. Normally, I was expecting one of their lawyers or the spokesperson to be part of the show today, but unfortunately, they have not yet responded because we have some questions we wanted the International Criminal Court to answer after the decision to acquit Laurent Gbagbo. And the first question we wanted to know from them is that the ICC upheld the acquittals of Gbagbo and Charles Oblegude. This means that they were unjustly detained for several years. How will the ICC compensate them for the years spent in pain?
For example,
the other question is, what will the court do to ensure that justice is done to the souls of those who were killed and who are crying for justice from their tombs? And we had another question too, that has the court put in place measures to ensure that Laurent Gbagbo remains safe and protected if he goes back to Ivory Coast? Because it's also very, very important. Yeah. And what is the ICC doing to build public trust in the institution, especially in Africa, where the court is being viewed by many as a masked political tool used to dislodge political enemies in Africa? So we send this interview protocol to the spokesperson of the ICC. We are waiting for them to answer. Probably they were not able to answer today, but we are hoping that if they answer at any time, we can still bring up the topic and talk about talk about this. So, Philemon, Mballe, Apostle Tohndoh, Agustine, what next for reconciliation and peace in Côte d'Ivoire?
Okay, thank you very much. I think one of the things we must discover from here is that there cannot be peace without justice. If there must be peace, justice must be served. Most of us, most of what we're talking about now is justice. Yes, Laurent Gbagbo has gotten justice. But what about those who died? What about those people who were massacred? They have their family members back there in Côte d'Ivoire who are waiting that justice should be served for their loved ones who died. But up to now, justice has not yet been served. So if Laurent Gbagbo is being acquitted, it actually means that there's a criminal hiding somewhere. I want to just call your attention a little bit, Mr. Elvis, that we have terrible rebels like Sidiki Konate, who was one of those serious guys who actually headed one of the serious rebel groups. We had Ismaila Bakayoko. We have this guy who was Isiaka Ouattara. These were some of the notorious rebel groups. Now, there were actually 10 of them in number. They came together to form the zone, which was actually now the zone that was controlled by the rebel groups. And this was actually about 93,000 square kilometers of the country, which is 60% of the country already covered by the rebels. They were hiding under the coverage of the French forces. And this zone, the UN forces were there, and they call it the buffer zone. They said they were keeping peace and whatsoever. But these are the same rebels who invaded Abidjan in 2011. They came in, and that morning before Laurent Gbagbo was being arrested, it was the French forces that bombarded his residence for him to be arrested. Now I'm coming somewhere. I want to ask: these rebels came to Abidjan. They invaded Abidjan within the time that these people were massacred. The French troops were there. They bombarded his residence, and in his residence we have picture of troops that were killed during that bombardment and all these things that happened. I think that the real culprits are outside. When the war ended and Ouattara took over the government, he actually transformed the rebel forces into Republican forces and called some of these guys like Ismaila Bakayoko. He was called to Abidjan, and they were given villas. They were given, I even hear about the promise of 71 million that was given to each of them, and they were given women. And you look in some of the Coupé de Calais songs that they sang after that, they were mentioning their names as heroes. And now I'm actually asking, how could these guys be in prison while the real people who massacre people are outside? If you listen to the words of Oblegude on the day that they were being acquitted, he actually said something. He spoke to the procurator of the court, and he said he's a victim. He doesn't know how a victim should be judged. He's actually one of those who were victimized in this issue. He said, actually, if they want to talk about those who kill people, he should not be mentioned, because he is the guy who went around the country rallying rebels to come together for reconciliation. So how possible can they actually be holding him in place and judging him? I think the only crime that Ouattara committed with Blé Goté was that they were against France. Ouattara was against the UN, and Ouattara was against the United States. They were actually standing for Africa and against this foreign intervention. They were against neocolonialism, and they were actually against imperialism. These were their crimes. If not, why should the criminals be held in Cote d'Ivoire and given villas in Abidjan, while these people are actually lavishing in prison for 8 years just to be acquitted at the 8th year? We want justice to be served for these 3,000 people who died, and we want actually the real culprits to be called to the International Court of Justice, judged, condemned, and locked up.
Thank you. Philemon Mballe.
Yeah, just to add that this is not just all about the 3,000 plus deaths as recorded by history. There are hundreds of thousands of Ivorians who have been tagged as on political asylum in Sierra Leone, neighboring other neighboring Burkina Faso, even Ghana, and so
many are traumatized too.
Hundreds of thousands of Ivorians
live in trauma.
As a result of the horrible incident which happened close to 10 years ago in Ivory Coast. So justice is not just for the dead. Justice is for the displaced. Those who have almost lost their identity as Ivorians. So it's far from over, like I said, Elvis. The real culprits need to be called to the book, and that could open another page in Ivorian history. A lot of people are saying reconciliation. I mean, I follow it on social media, reconciliation. How do you reconcile with where the criminal is still out there, where those who murdered, those who facilitated the killing of fellow citizens are still out there? Well, it's a popular song, Reconciliation. I would sing, but deep down in me, I know that for reconciliation to be, justice needs to precede reconciliation.
Wainkem Pilate, do you still see that Laurent Gbagbo stands a chance of one day being elected president of Ivory Coast again, if he vies for that position?
Yes, I still think that there are a lot of Ivorians who support him. He still has a lot of support in the country and even outside of the country. And like we have been saying, is he going to receive a hero's welcome back home? I don't think so, because the present government will not give him that kind of opportunity. You know, receiving him like his wife was talking about, you know, sending an airplane to bring him home. That really will not happen, because they will just be, you know, lifting him to a greater platform, giving him the opportunity to speak, letting people actually see who he was, you know, because all this while he has not had the chance to really express himself, to explain things. He was just bundled and taken out of the country. So yeah, he has a chance, you know. If he comes back to the country, everything gets back to normal, he has a chance of, you know, running and leading Ivory Coast again. I think so.
Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, if you're just joining us, you're watching your favorite news magazine program, 90 Minutes in Africa, coming to you from my media Prime Africa. We're broadcasting from Douala, the economic capital of Cameroon in Central Africa. You can participate in the program by sending us an SMS using the number you find on your screen, or by sending us a message on WhatsApp. Time for us to usher our next theme, because last week we talked about the passing away of a former Tanzanian President John Pombe Magufuli. One of our viewers suggested that it was important for us to understand to understand the early departure of our Pan-African heroes. And before we launch the topic, that is understanding the early departure of our Pan-African heroes, it is time for us to look at some of the top Pan-African heroes we are talking about before we launch the topic. Why is it that those who champion the cause of Pan-Africanism die so young under very mysterious or somehow controversial circumstances? Let's begin by taking a look at the life of Kwame Nkrumah. You know, Kwame Nkrumah was the first president of Ghana. He was known for his relentless fight for Africa's unity and independence, which earned him the title of the father of Pan-Africanism. Kwame Nkrumah, he promoted African unity and freedom. He contributed to Ghana's independence in 1957, and he convened the first conference of independent African states in 1958. But unfortunately, Kwame Nkrumah died following an incurable illness. He died far away in Bucharest, Romania, on April 27, 1972, and he died a lonely man, young, far from the people he loved, and the controversy surrounding his funeral was highly unfortunate. And let's talk about another Pan-African. Let's talk about another Pan-African hero who passed away. Let's talk about Amilcar Cabral. Amilcar Cabral was one of the greatest intellectual, revolutionary, theoretician and political leaders Africa produced. It was in the 20th century, the principal architect of the struggle to liberate Guinea-Bissau and Cape Verde from the yoke of Portuguese colonialism. From virtually nothing, he built the most vibrant guerrilla movement in Africa and fought the colonialists to a standstill. His close relations with the Soviet Union and China, and his ideological beliefs and in various doctrines, and made him. He was referred to at that time as one of the most brilliant political demagogues of that era. But unfortunately, he was allegedly assassinated by Portuguese secret police working in conjunction with disgruntled members of movement outside his home in Conakry, where his party had its headquarters. Time for us to take a look at another Pan-African hero, this time around, Patrice Lumumba. The story of Patrice Lumumba is a sad story each time it is told. As you know, gentlemen, Patrice Lumumba, he had the determination to achieve independence for his people. He wanted his people to take control of their God-given resources. This brought him anger, hostility, detention, death, and humiliation from some of his opponents, Belgium, the colonial master, and its allies. He championed the ideals of national unity and economic independence and Pan-African solidarity. He fought to rid Congo of rural economic exploitation and political subjugation, and he was tortured for days, and in one of the most organized killings of an African hero, he was brutally assassinated, and his body was discovered with acid all over him in a bid to remove his memory from history. Another hero now, this time around from Cameroon, Felix Mumi, who was popularly referred to as the Lumumba of Cameroon, the leader. He was once leader of the Union de Population du Cameroon, UPC, left-wing political party. He was celebrated for his nationalistic outlook. In 1960, he was allegedly poisoned in Geneva, far away from his beloved country, and his body was buried controversially in Guinea, embalmed and placed in and embalmed. And of course, talking to about another Pan-African hero, Ben Bakar. Ben Bakar, he was a charismatic Moroccan opposition leader, born in 1920 in Rabat. He attended French school in Morocco, and Ben Bakar, he got involved in politics, became a member of parliament. Ben Bakar was very, very influential to the independence of Morocco, and he founded the National Union of Popular Forces in Morocco. He fled Morocco after several attempts on his life. Even in his absence, he was sentenced to death. Ben Bakar traveled the world to Cuba, Rome, Geneva, and so on and so forth. And he was part of the organizer of the first Tricontinental Conference scheduled to take place in Cuba. But he suddenly disappeared mysteriously in the middle of Paris, and he was never seen again. Then we talk again about another Pan-African hero, Eduardo Mondlane. Eduardo Mondlane, who was the leader of Frelimo and an indisputable hero of Mozambican independence. He was one of the most educated African leaders at that time, who studied in who studied in Harvard in the United States. He even worked at the United Nations, and he was very influential to the independence of Mozambique. But he was killed in 1969 by a bomb which was sent to him. Disguised bomb sent to him as a book, it was sent to him as a book by unknown assassins. Let's talk about this Pan-African hero who is very, very popular, Thomas Sankara. Thomas Sankara, he will remain in the minds of many Africans as one of the greatest leaders who lived, quite a humble man who used to move around his people. A man who cut government spending, was very influential in the economic development of Burkina Faso. He initiated people-oriented programs. He was popular. He became a global public figure. He was killed in an assassination, in a coup that led by his friend and ally, Blaise Compaoré. I think the list goes on and on. So it brings us now to the question of what can we do to ensure that our Pan-African heroes live for long, and we also need to try to understand the early departure of these Pan-African heroes. I don't know. I want to begin with you. Let me begin with you, Philemon Mballe.
Well, Elvis, I think a good number of a good number of the Pan-African heroes that you listed, I would say, suffered the effect of colonialism. Now, most of them died within the period 1940 to 70, 80, and that period, I mean, it was hot on the continent. Everyone wanted a piece of the cake on the African continent, and so guys like these, like the Lumumbas, who would not want their people exploited by foreigners, who would not want their sovereignty tainted by invaders, I mean, they were easily removed from the equation. Now let's look at post-colonialism. We also have some African leaders who died within that period. That is to say, after Africa got its independence, most African countries had their independence, there was still the impact of colonialism. And there is still, I mean, we are still talking about countries which are still under French influence. So many, especially in Central Africa and West Africa. And we've had in recent times the Gaddafis who have been killed in broad daylight as a result of the fact that they tried to pronounce their Pan-Africanistic viewpoint. They tried to prevent invaders from recolonizing or continuing the process of colonialism. So it's always going to happen that way, unfortunately. But like answering your question now, what do we do to preserve this Pan-African idea? I mean, those guys will always be targeted, but you and I, as journalists, as analysts, as presenters, we must say the truth as it is. We must say it is Africa for Africa by Africa. We must indoctrinate our children, our upcoming generations. We must teach them African history. We must teach them Cameroonian history and not world history. Christopher Columbus discovered the sea route to India and blah blah blah. We must tell the story as it is, such that we keep our legacy, we keep our cultural values, we keep our Africanism, I should say. So that is how we are going to preserve our continent, and we preserve our Pan-Africanists as well, because these guys will always be targeted. So long as the invaders have interest in Africa, they will always want to look for leaders who are feeble enough, who they can manipulate, who they can direct, and keep their presence on the continent. So to me, it's as simple as talking more as Pan-Africans, create more awareness as Pan-Africans. We can do this by ourselves. We shall do it by ourselves, and we get to work, and we shall do it by ourselves. So basically, to me, that's how I can answer your question, for us to stop Pan-Africanists, such Pan-Africanists dying mysteriously and disappearing from the surface of the earth.
Tohndoh, Agustine, do you think probably it is time for Africans to change the way they're championing the Pan-African agenda?
I want to start by saying that it's really so painful to have a continent so blessed by God, a continent that from creation of the world has been at the top of the agenda, ending up to suffer the way Africa suffer. When you even go through history, you discover that Africa has made history more than any other continent in the world. We are the cradle of civilization, and one of the ancient civilizations have been discovered in Africa and everything. But now, what actually happened in the world, I want us to understand the way this world functions. It's a system. It's a system where you have some predators, let me call them that way, some predators, the deep state in quote, institutions in quote. It's not one country, Mr. Elvis, if we want to think that. It's not one country. There are some countries that never came to colonize a country in Africa, but now they're actually preying on Africa. And what they do is they actually promote weak African heads of state. They promote people who will be heads of state in Africa. They will loot African resources with the fear that if they will now rebel against these people who are actually exploiting Africa, they will be able to use the ICC, like we earlier said at the beginning of our, or they'll be able to incite rebellion, incite terrorism. Let me actually say this. Terrorism is actually a fruit of neocolonialism. In Africa, terrorism is a fruit of neocolonialism. Who are sponsoring the terrorists? Where do they get the guns? Do we produce guns in Africa? How does the guns get to Africa? All these things are masterminded, and we've seen interviews, we've seen people confessing on how they have been used by these colonial powers, by these great powers of the world to do regime changes in Africa, to inflict sicknesses in Africa. And we must understand that these heroes do not only die by gunshot, they don't only die by coup d'etat. Some of them we are told that some of them had heart attack, which we can't imagine how the heart attack came about. You will find someone so strong today like my beloved Magufuli, who just passed away, one of my most beloved presidents in Africa, who is so bold and could be able to stand and speak. Let me actually tell you, we've had people who have confessed that they were sent, they will even poison you, and within some time you'll be discovered with an illness, and the doctor will give a report. And once the doctor gives that report and the media blows it off, everybody knows that's what you died of. But actually you were eliminated. And I actually want to say every African head of state that has stood for Africa, like Philemon Mballe just said, Africa for Africa by the Africans. This is actually democracy. This is what we're saying. And Donald Trump stood and said, America first. And actually he championed his agenda of America first. I really wish to have an African president who will stand up for Africa first. We have problems that are going on in Africa. People will be killed, and there will be a problem that will be going on in the Gambia at the same time. And at that time, a church will be burnt somewhere in France. And Africa heads of state, instead of focusing on the problems that are going on in Africa, they're actually consulting with the church that is burning in France, which I don't see the use of a church burning in France, and they're contributing money and sending there. What is wrong with us, Africa? These heads of states of these countries that will promote heads of states in Africa, who are there just as figureheads, who are there just as puppets. They will even love it if you can't think well. They will even love it if you can't even rule well, so that they can be able to control you very well. So actually what I want to say is the elimination of African heroes does not only go by gunshot. Let us be very careful. They can even poison the food to eat. They can even inflict sicknesses in your body. They can even send people. These are well-skilled men. So what we're fighting against is so organized. It is not so scattered. It's not the way we are in Africa. And the reason why up till now Africans have not been able to really champion Pan-Africanism right to the point is because we are so divided amongst ourselves. Who did they use to kill Thomas Sankara? It was his own friend. His own friend. What actually happened? Who did they use to kill the guy who championed the independence of Guinea-Conakry? It was the rebellious people around him. Who did they use to eliminate Muammar Gaddafi? It was Libyans. How did they get through? We're talking about Laurent Gbagbo, who has just been acquitted. How did they get him? They got Ivorians, these guys from the north, and they instill what they call tribalism. This is a weapon the West is using against Africa. The north, which was dominated by the rebels, said no, leadership must not come from the south, where Blé Godé and Laurent Gbagbo is coming from. This is the same thing they're struggling to plant into our Cameroonian society, to talk about the Bamileke case, the Anglophones, the Northerners, the this, the that. We Africans, we must come to understand that whether I am a Fufude or I'm a Balakan, anti-Balakan, or I am whosoever, we are from one descent. We carry this black color, this precious skin that we have with so much melanin. We are being haunted in the world because of how precious we are. So we must stop hating ourselves. We must stop tribalism, and we must understand that the West is using these things to kill us and kill our heroes. They want to kill the heroes of Africa. They will pass through the Africans. They will use the division amongst ourselves. They will use the tribalism to be able to destroy us. How can we save the African continent? How can we save the heroes? Sir, it's a long road. I want to say I will not actually advise radicalism, because how do they identify you that you are a hero, upcoming hero that they can eliminate? If you become so radical, let's use the Blake Godet kind of strategy. This guy just grew up in the university, and he has his mentor, Laurent Gbagbo, there, who was in the university. And how did Laurent Gbagbo champion his cause? He could rally university students, and they go out to the streets, and Blake Godet caught that, and he started his own pressure group in the university as a union, the FESI movement. And when he started the FESI movement, the president actually ratified it, and he loved it. And Blake Godet later on moved the movement out of the university, and it became a youth movement in the country. All the youths loved him. He championed Africa for Africa, and the youths loved him. And what happened? If Blake Godet get up one morning and blow a whistle, everybody will be in the street. It was gradual. So let us not go by the radical approach, because what we're fighting against is so organized. It's so organized that if you're not careful, you can be wiped out in a second. Let us actually start, like Philemon Mballe said, let's instill this Pan-Africanism in our children. It may not happen. Africa may not be liberated during our time, but it will be liberated in the time of our children. Let's educate them. Let us not go for holiday over there in France, or going to Dubai. Let's go down to Equatorial Guinea here with beautiful places with our children. Let's teach them to love Africa. Let's teach good and constructive, objective African education. Not teaching about Mungo Park, not teaching about Christopher Columbus, which we'll never see him and we don't not even know the importance of it. Let's teach an education that is constructive. We start from there. Teach Africa to consume African goods. Teach Africa you can produce in Africa. And from this, when we start loving ourselves, start loving our presidents, start seeing how we can solve our problem without calling for foreign intervention. This is what I really want to call our attention here. No foreign nation will come to intervene in your country without interest. Every foreign nation that comes to your country is coming with interest. And let me also call the attention of Africans. Even the organization, foreign organization, I don't want to call names, they come in with interest. They will wait until why would there be a crisis in Cameroon and people are dying and they are beginning to write to organization, and they will not come until thousands of people have died. They want us to go to a point of desperation, so that when they come and place their interest on the table, we will be able to just welcome, and they create the problem and they behave like the messiahs. Let us be careful.
Wainkem Pilate, thank you, Tohndoh, Agustine. Wainkem Pilate, I get to you now. He talked about instilling the Pan-African spirit in our children, and he cited some what should be done. I wanted to elaborate on that, maybe give some other ideas on what we can do to ensure that the Pan-African spirit is instilled in our children.
Yes, I would like to begin by saying that, first of all, the foundation for African independence was flawed from the beginning. Because if somebody came and took over your land, control it for years, for centuries, in some cases, and then all of a sudden they decided to say, okay, it's time for you to take over. But you know what? They gave you political power, they held the economy
power,
and then they want to control how you think. So ideologically, Africa had never been free. And I want to also help us understand that when you look at the first generation leaders, talking about the fathers of independence, like you just mentioned most of them, they came to realize that true independence for Africa would come when we start to think differently, when we think for ourselves, when we can build our own economy like Africans, build ourselves politically with what our environment offers for us. They came to realize that true freedom will come when Africans control the economy. They control their resources. And you know, it is difficult for a master to look at the subject, you know, thinking differently, not doing what he or she is being told. No, they can't take that. And so one of those things we see somebody for instance, you spoke of Kwame Nkrumah. He's one of those people who wanted to change Africa's ideology. It's the same thing with Patrice Lumumba and most of them. And so from the beginning, our independence was based on let's give them political power. And so when these people came into power and they realized we don't just need political power, we need ideological freedom. We need to think as Africans. That's where the problem begins. How dare you dare to think differently? And so it's still the same thing today. Second generation leaders, the same challenges, even right till today, the same challenges. So when you rise up in Africa and you want to think differently, you are a target.
Thank
and
you.
So, yeah.
Okay, thank you, Wainkem Pilate. I'm sorry to cut you short. I think this topic is so important that we are going to come back to it. Because it's one topic I want us to handle, because we have about 15 minutes left to the end of the program, which is about how Africa buries talent. As you know, a Cameroonian, Francis Ngannou, was this week crowned a heavyweight champion in the United States. A guy who was born in Batie in the west region of Cameroon, a man who struggled to move to Europe more than 11 times until he finally succeeded, moving through the sea and through the desert. And a man who swallowed money on paper, who swallowed paper money because he never wanted to be attacked by thieves. And finally he went to France. From France, Francis Ngannou moved over to the US, and he was crowned champion, heavyweight champion. And of course we are having the lightweight champion is from Nigeria, the middleweight champion is from Nigeria, and we have a Cameroonian who is a heavyweight champion, a guy who was working in a sandpit in the west of Cameroon, and of course who was basically who had no opportunity to evolve in Cameroon, and who is today the pride of the country. Let's go to our missions and watch how Francis Ngannou was made a heavyweight champion in the UFC, and they will come back to understand how Africa buries talent for at least 15 minutes before the program comes to an end.
Francis Ngannou can finally call himself the greatest heavyweight in the world.
You go into the fire with Ngannou, you go to sleep. Oh my goodness.
Wow.
That was nasty.
That's it. World Championship, we doing. We told you the experience. Amazing composure by Francis.
Calm Francis is the scariest human being on the planet.
Francis Ngannou finally breaks through and becomes the undisputed UFC heavyweight champion of the world.
It's been an honor. I swear to God, it's been an honor. Good job. Thank you. You make the best out of me. Thank you.
And new undisputed UFC heavyweight champion of the world, Francis the Predator Ngannou.
Champion! 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 Come on,
Stipe Miocic, still greatest heavyweight of all time. And I wonder where this leaves the former champion at 38 years old after getting stopped in the way that Francis did.
Let that go! Let that go, Bill! Let that go! Get this! Go!
Look at my boy, Ngannou, Francis Ngannou. I mean, look at that.
Look how happy he is.
Holy smokes.
Look how happy he is.
Talk about being excited for a young man to finally accomplish his goal.
West Africa, baby, that's 3.
This one means a lot, to have a third champion in the UFC when there's less than 20 Africans fighting in the UFC. We got 3 champions. 3. I mean, I'm speechless.
The winner and new heavyweight champion of the world. Francis, how does that feel?
It feels so amazing, bro. You know, even though I've been fighting winning fight, but I had this thing inside of me that I never released it. This was like a promise that I made to myself since when I was young, you know, to be one day in the first stage and to prove the doubter and people that thought that I was beneath them, that you know, it wasn't my fault, and if ever I have an opportunity, I'll do something great and even better, even greater. and that's what I'm here for.
But time is the best. 3 African champion. Now we go.
Yo, we feel good now. It feels complete. I think it was just something that we always knew. It was written. It was in his universe. We just knew. So it was up to him just to go out and conquer it. We already knew that it was going to be there for him.
It was pure exhilaration. Pure exhilaration. But we knew it. We knew the experience would be the factor. We knew it.
So what's next? What's next for you guys?
We're going to go on a run. That's what's next. This is the start of the dynasty.
Disneyland. Disneyland.
Barry's Prime. Going to feed this big boy. Get some food.
Thank you so much. Those images are courtesy of the UFC. Gentlemen, we have only about 10 minutes to react to this. Basically, we are prepared to talk about this until the death of Cardinal TUMI came in, and we had to incorporate it into our topics. But I think it's important for us to understand how Africa buries talent, how Africa's buries talent. I think our control room needs to change that. How Africa buries talent is what we are talking about right now. We saw Francis Ngannou, who struggled to move to Europe 11 times, was rejected 11 times. It means that we're having so many Francis Ngannous in Africa, wherever they're found. He was born in Bati. He never had opportunity to evolve in Cameroon, but he struggled by opposite means and moved to the US. And today we see him. He's the heavyweight champion of the world. As the UFC guys will put it, he's the baddest man in the planet, as they'll put it. Philemon, your reaction to that?
Well, my reaction is simple. I do not think in this particular case Africa is burying its talent. What I think rather is that Africa is propelling its talent. You know, they always say there's a right time for everything. This is Africa's time. It is not by chance that in all three categories, the heavyweight, middleweight, and lightweight, we have Africans. It's not by chance. This is Africa's time. And who could ever imagine at one point in time, any day, that this is possible? So to me, we are not burying our talents. On the contrary, we are bringing our talents to the limelight. And to corroborate this, last night I stayed awake late. I stayed up late because I was watching a magazine program, Kickoff. That's the name of the magazine. And then I realized that Francis Ngannou has an academy for extreme sports fighters in Cameroon. So you see, 5 years down the line, why not? We would definitely have another Francis Ngannou out there in the world.
If he remains in Cameroon, the issue was if they remains in Africa, do they need to go through all the troubles they are going through before they are brought to the limelight?
There is a competition which is almost like the UFC, the EFC. It's in South Africa. It is equally gaining steam. I think it's somewhat an African version of the UFC. It is very popular in South Africa. It's basically the same thing. Who knows? Within 5 years, that competition could become a continental affair, and you know, fighters from Cameroon, Nigeria, because this martial arts sports is really gaining grounds on the continent, thanks to these guys, Ngannou and the two other Nigerians. So I want to believe that we are not burying our talents. On the contrary, right now in Africa, we are bringing out our talents.
Apostle Tohndoh, Agustine, your reaction after watching Francis Ngannou?
I think I'm looking at it from another point. Africa buries talent, yes, because we naturally have a lot of people who have the same dreams with Francis. They want to become heavyweight champions. They want to go into martial arts, karateka, wrestling, and every of those things. But one of the things that happen is that Africa does not dispose enough resources to be able to really allow these guys to expose their talents. When you go down to schools, at the level of the primary school, there are always competitions that the minister organizes. And he organizes these competitions at times to allow children to be able to do a lot of athletics. You go there, you see people doing boxing, they do karateka, they move to the level and the finals to the national level. You go to secondary schools, it's the same. In the university, we have university games. And in most of those cases, you have a lot of people who showcase a lot of talents, but it ends at a level. Once you leave the university, you don't even have an academy around to go there. It's true Francis Ngannou might have opened an academy, but most people didn't know about the academy until now, that maybe he has become popular, and we don't have many of such academies in our country. We hear about faker karate, faker this, faker that, but at times to become at the limelight in a country like us, we still find that you still have to struggle and go through some other means before you find yourself up there. We've had a lot of footballers who could play well, but they were not selected because maybe they say the process was not just the playing well. There was a political process involved. We just had a game that just ended in a nation, which we hear the native doctors were involved in the selection of players. We've never heard that in any country in the world, and that led to a lot of things. I'm not actually confirming that, but this is what we got it on social media and whatsoever. So what I'm just actually saying here is Francis Ngannou, actually, we've known him. He crossed to Europe through all those precarious means and finally got to the US. If he remained in Cameroon, my question is, would he have become the Francis Ngannou we know today? This is where I see the level of Africa bearing talents, because if Africa does not offer those opportunities for those students who will not be able to pass through the desert, for those children who will not be able to have a visa to go to Europe, for those children who will not be able to have a visa to go to the United States, if Africa will not offer the opportunity for them to be trained at home, to compete, to one day represent Cameroon somewhere and one day move to UFC, then if we will only have to move to America or move to Europe to be able to be trained that way, it will still be that we are still bearing talents. Thank God for Francis Ngannou, who has opened a sport academy of such. I actually have a dream of such also, to open another sports academy for one or two. But one I want to say is, let Africa allow, Mr. Elvis, even at home, some of our parents even prevent us from doing sports. When you go and they find you being a footballer, they feel that no, you don't want to become someone better. I think it should start from our homes. We should encourage. I spoke to a child. I had a youth camp 2 days ago when I gathered youths and we're discussing with them. And one of the youths told me, I want to be a footballer. And I was moved. I asked him, what is your reason of being a footballer? He said he wants to be a star, get money, and build houses for the homeless children he moves and sees in the streets of Douala. This is a great purpose that a young man is carrying. And Francis Ngannou just said it, that he made a promise to himself that he will aim at nothing to become at the forefront of the world sport, so that he can prove to those who saw him in the sandpit somewhere in Mballe and thought that he was nothing, that God can actually bring out something out of the rejected people. So I think Africa should build more training facilities to train people like them.
Wainkem, Pilate, you react briefly to this, because we just have 3 minutes to end the program. React briefly to this so that we end. I'll promise to come back to it in upcoming editions.
Yeah, I think the issue is simple. If we had infrastructure, how long has it taken for a Cameroonian to be at such a position? So I think we lack infrastructure, we lack good organizations, we lack sponsors, we lack promotions, and we lack so many things, If our leaders and governments will look into such things, I think Africa will produce much more greater talent.
We take some messages. I have this message: dear panelists, Christianity is a culture recruiting from all human cultures, and there is no going back except you did resign or renounce one. That is Che. I think I don't know he's reacting on which topic yet. Che from Tico. Hello panelists, I am Tumban Sparks. Europeans were interested only to teach us how to remember and not to think. That is coming from Tumban Sparks. He hasn't told us where he's writing from. And then we have several other messages coming in. Hello, watching from Yaoundé, watching from Kumba, watching from Douala, watching from the US, watching from the United Arab Emirates. So people are watching us from all over, and they're just indicating and sharing. Ladies and gentlemen, it is on that note that we end this edition of the program. I want to thank Wainkem Pilate. I want to thank you, Tohndoh Agustine. I thank you, Philemon Mballe. I thank Derek, correspondent in Ivory Coast, who did some interviews for us. I also want to thank all those who contributed in one way or the other. We will be coming back with other themes. Some of these themes will be coming up in upcoming editions, because we never really had time today to talk about them. The rebroadcast comes up every Sunday from 10 a.m. So you can watch the rebroadcast every Sunday from 10 a.m. Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the news department, the administration, and the technical crew of my Media Prime, I am Boh Elvis, thanking you for watching. Bye-bye.